Welcome in. It's the Day 1 Club Nationals recap show. The sun is setting here in San Diego. I'm Charlie Eisenhood alongside Keith Rayner. And we just watched an epic day of pool play here at Club Nationals, and we've got a lot to get to, so let's dive in. You know, when we sat down yesterday on our Deep Look podcast and talked about the matchups that we were expecting to see, some of the games that we were looking forward to, in a lot of ways, a lot of the big matchups that we were anticipating ended up not being as competitive as we kind of expected, but there were a lot of surprises along the way as teams, really even down to the fourth seed in their pool, were getting upsets, making a name for themselves, and making the brackets tomorrow extremely interesting.
Absolutely, and not only did we see some of the top seeds fall in other matchups other than to the second seed in their pool, but we also saw teams being put in difficult situations by losing other games. So even some of the teams that ended up winning their pool that we expected to do so, it was a bit of a high wire act to get there because of some of their earlier mistakes or close matches that they played in their journey to get to that last round.
So let's just go right in and take a look here. We've got the pool results up from the women's division right now, and you've got the top four seeds going undefeated. They all go 3-0. Molly Brown did have that tough game against Scandals, 15-13 win for Molly Brown. But there were lots of interesting things that happened down the pools as we saw teams really exceeding expectations, others really not meeting the expectations. And here's a look right now at where things stand in the pre-quarter. So again, the top four seeds all advanced to quarters, no surprise there. But then you take a look at these pools. Sixers versus Rival in the pre-quarters. That's the 7 and 10 seeds. So Rival getting an upset there. Traffic, the 14 seed, doing well in their pool. They'll play Ozone, the 6 seed in the pre-quarter. Then there's Scandal versus Heist, the 5 versus the 12. And finally, you've got Wildfire versus Schwa, the 16 versus the 13. So you can already see some of these teams that were bottom, you have Schwa, Traffic, and Wildfire, all bottom seeds, all making it to the pre-quarters. So despite the fact that the top may not have been that interesting, lots of surprises down below, and I think it sets up for some potentially interesting upset opportunities tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, you're highlighting that matchup between Wildfire and Schwa when you see two teams that started out the day at the bottom of their pools. Wildfire advancing to the pre-quarters for the first time in program history. They're tweeting about how excited they are about it right now, and one of those two teams go to quarterfinals. Wildfire could go to quarterfinals tomorrow if they can beat a team that came into the tournament seeded number 13 overall. Now, Schwa had a really strong day. They even pushed Brute Squad. I mean, that's one of those games where it's a bit more exciting than when it looks like on paper. They were with Brute Squad neck and neck until the final stretches of that game when Brute Squad pulled away, when their defense really found some traction and remembered who they are. But that's an exciting one. You got Traffic, another low seed. They upset Phoenix, who I think is one of the stories of the day in the sense that they didn't make the bracket. I mean, this was an 11 seed and a team that I think there were a lot of people who were really high on. They were the 9 overall in our power rankings, a team that had been hovering on the top 5 in points this year. And they just didn't look like they belonged really today. They got shellacked in almost all their games.
Yeah, it was a rough day for them. And I think we saw a number of teams that, whether they were talking about a team kind of in the middle like that, or even a team like, talk about Mixtape in the mixed division, team that had obviously extremely high expectations considering that they're defending their national championship and that they played very well during the regular season. They didn't look very good this morning. And then in the game that everybody was waiting for, them versus Space Heater, they got blown out. They lost by 6. So they were not really competitive at that level. They still have a chance to redeem themselves. And we even saw today some micro redemption as, a team like Pony goes out and loses to Johnny Bravo, and probably the biggest upset of the day, period, and certainly in the men's division. Bravo getting the win over Pony, but then they bounce back, immediately turn around and destroy Truck Stop on our Ultiworld stream and win the pool on point diff. So at the end of the day, they're through to the quarterfinals all the same. But I think it goes to show you how important it is to bring the right energy and the right intensity to every game that you play at Club Nationals. You can't expect to show up and play a little bit loose. We saw the same thing, Blackbird this morning, gets crushed by Toro, and then turns around and wins the pool by beating Amp. And they basically admitted after the game against Toro that they just showed up sleepwalking, went down 6-1, and lost. So, you can't assume you're going to win any game at Club Nationals.
I mean, to me, that speaks to just how hard it is to win a national championship. And these teams that you see year in and year out getting to semis, getting to the finals, winning titles, I mean, you probably sometimes forget how hard it is to really do it, to just do it every time. And we see teams that struggled to do that, even teams we expected to. I mean, we haven't even gotten – the mixed division is a wild one. Not in no small part because the number one overall seed, the team that was the most popular selection by Ulti World's panel of experts, if you will, to win the national title, they got to play in pre-quarters. Didn't even win their pool.
Yeah. And let's take a look at those pre-quarters matchups in the mixed division. Quickly, the pool winners – we'll go through it. Blackbird wins in Pool A. In Pool B, Dragon Thrust ends up coming out on top, although they had a tough game against Shame. Space Heater beating Mixtape to win Pool C. And Snake Country. So we talked yesterday on the podcast about Snake Country and Space Heater, these new teams with a lot of star power, many players coming over from these single-gender divisions and playing mixed for the first time or for the first time in a long time. And how would they fare? Well, they fared very well, both teams winning their pool. And so then that brings you to the pre-quarters matchups. And you've got Polar Bears versus Mixtape, Shame versus Mischief, BFG versus No Touching, and Slow White versus Amp, which, as a little bonus for those watching right now, that will be the game that we stream first thing tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern. Perfect time for your lunch break or maybe your coffee break or your breakfast break at work, since it'll be Friday. Tomorrow's a zero productivity day at work, by the way, for those in the Ultimate Frisbee community. I mean, obviously all the people here have already, made up excuses for why they couldn't be at work tomorrow. But if you're watching at home, come on. You're going to be at work, but you're just going to be low-key. We need to get that boss button built into ultiworld.com/live. So those are your matchups, and once again, you see some potentially some surprising teams in the mix. In the mixed division, more than the bottom seeds playing up, it was the top seeds falling down.
Yeah, and even the teams that won their pool, I mean, you look at Space Heater, they dropped a game to Mischief this morning. Snake Country, they were like going neck and neck with the number 16 seed Cocktails. They ended up pulling that game out. They didn't win that BFG game convincingly. It was 12-10, and it was close the whole way. So, even the teams that ended up winning their pools had some tough tests. Blackbird, another one. They lost a game earlier today to Toro, like you mentioned. So, I think that we saw teams that even advanced into the quarterfinals already getting pushed. And that portends pretty well for what those quarterfinal rounds are going to bring for us because there's no certainty. There's just no certainty in the mixed division right now.
Definitely not. And you start to look ahead and you think about the matchups that we might see. We might see Mixtape versus Blackbird, kind of like a throwback of the old and the new school.
You think Mixtape isn't excited about the prospect of that? I mean, not having to go through one of the teams I think that they would be more concerned about. Amp, Blackbird may have beaten Amp, but who do you think Mixtape is more focused on?
Yeah, I mean, take a look at this. You've got Amp, Dragon Thrust, BFG, and Space Heater all on the same side of the bracket. And on the other side, it's, Mixtape and Snake Country, I guess.
The highest-seeded team besides Mixtape is a 5 seed.
Mixtape, if they play well tomorrow, can absolutely still find a very nice path to the final. Because all they got to do is beat Polar Bears. That seems like a game that they should win. Then they will play Blackbird, which is a game that they will be expected to win. And then they will probably face off against the winner. I mean, maybe it'll be Snake Country, maybe it'll be Mischief, maybe it'll be Shame.
Maybe they'll get the Southwest gamut. You got to go through all the Southwest teams to get to the final.
Yeah, Polar Bears, Blackbird, Mischief all in a row. It seems possible, honestly.
That's totally possible.
Mischief's got enough in the tank, I think, to get wins in those games. But Mixtape will be the favorite in each of their matchups, even though they had a rough day today. So a nice path for them. On the other side of the bracket, though, things are just brutal. Amp has to play Slow White first thing. Now, Slow White may not be the same team they were, but still a tough matchup. Then they're going to have to play against Dragon Thrust if they win that game. So you've got the number 1 and number 2 seeds at the tournament aligned for a clash in the quarterfinals. Lots to see, and Space Heater probably looks like they've got a pretty good path to the semis. They're going to have to get through the winner of BFG and no touching. And once they get there, I think that's when they really get their first big test. You could argue it was Mixtape, but with some of the injuries that Mixtape had and just the way they were playing today, they were not in form. That was not a team that was prepared to beat a team that was at an elite level. But Space Heater against Amp or Dragon Thrust, well, that's where I think that they're going to get truly tested.
I mean, the question here, and it is every time we come to these kind of upsets at Nationals, is how do you recalibrate? When we came into this weekend, the teams that we were thinking about potentially winning a title in the mixed division, Amp, Dragon Thrust, Mixtape, Space Heater. I'd say those were the 4 everybody's thinking about. There are a couple other teams that maybe could work their way in, but those are the teams. Now that we have gotten to the point where Amp drops a game, Space Heater drops a game, Dragon Thrust gets pushed, Mixtape drops games. How do you recalibrate? Are those still the title favorites? It's always a difficult conversation to have, and really, it's the kind of thing that you have to watch the teams play to know.
Right. Let's take a look at the men's division, and so Revolver took care of business as usual. Sockeye played extremely well today. Let's take a look at their scores real quick. We watched them this morning take on Double Wide, and then they had, of course, we talked all about that pool, Temper, Dig. Those were all competitive games. They beat Double Wide 14-11. They beat Temper 15-11. They beat Dig 15-11. But I don't really think that they were ever in a position where it felt like they were going to lose a game. They were completely in control against Double Wide. They were in control against Dig. And so I think you're seeing big-time bounce back from Sockeye. How far will they go? That is the question. I didn't think we saw a great Double Wide team today. I didn't get a chance to see the Dig game, but I think that's a sign. If you're a fan of Sockeye, you've got to feel good about where they are. Yes, they have Pony in semis, but I think that game could be a classic.
You want to talk about potential classic. Sockeye, quarterfinals matchup, maybe against Furious. Team just beat them to win the region. You think they don't want that one back? I talked to people on Sockeye. They want that one back. You know this. Let's actually take a look at this men's division bracket. Your pool winners: Revolver in Pool A, Sockeye in Pool B, as you mentioned. Pony somehow pulls it off with a really impressive win over Truck Stop. Can't take anything away from them for really just demolishing Truck Stop in that game. They win Pool C. Ring of Fire, the team nobody's talking about, wins Pool D. Although they had their tests too. So that sets us up with these pre-quarters. You've got Dig versus Truck Stop. We'll come back to that because you can marinate on that for a little bit. Then you got Double Wide and Bravo, the South Central rivalry.
They play at Nationals every year.
It's going to be great.
Double Wide just tweeted, as required by USA Ultimate bylaws, we play Bravo Ultimate in the bracket tomorrow.
Double Wide clever tweets. Then we also have Machine and High Five. And we have Furious and Sub-Zero. So those are our bracket games as a bug flies into my eye. I apologize about that. So we've got some interesting setups here. Let's go back to that Dig Truck game because that's what people are going to want to talk about. What's your take on Dig versus Truck in a pre-quarter final?
Well, it makes me wonder if they've played already this year. I know they were both at the Pro Championships. We're going to pull it up and take a look at that. I think that's a pick'em game. Basically, and I think that's why you're going to get excited about it. It's because despite the fact that Truck kind of got roughed up by Pony this afternoon, I think Pony is a good bit better than Dig. They did play at the Pro Championships, and they Dig lost to Truck Stop. What was the score? 15-13. So that seems about right. I mean, I think that contest could go the other direction, but I think that game finishes within 2 points either way. And, both of those teams looking for a chance to play against Revolver, which, interestingly enough, I like both of those teams as an actual challenge to Revolver in quarters. Because we saw Dig put up a pretty darn good game against Revolver at the Pro Championships, and Truck has historically matched up extremely well with Revolver. They haven't really been able to get the big wins in big spots against them, but they were a point away from beating Revolver a few years ago in the quarterfinals, and I think they've just long matched up well because of their personnel. They looked a little tired today. Rowan McDonald specifically was cramping up. Like, he had cramps in both calves during the pony game. You really hope that he can get rested up and be fresh for tomorrow, because they're going to need him to play really well if they want to have any chance really against Dig or Revolver. But I'm excited about that game. We will be streaming the Revolver quarterfinal. That is not something that we normally do, but I think that you could expect that game to at least be interesting. We'll see what happens.
I mean, it's not the only game that's intriguing here. I think all of these games could go either way. I could see any of these teams advancing through pre-quarters. There are 8 teams in pre-quarters, and none of them would surprise me as quarterfinalists.
Right. I mean, Double Wide Bravo is a game that we know is going to be extremely close. They've played so many really close games at Nationals, and they just played in the regional final, and Double Wide barely beat Bravo. So could that game swing the other way? Absolutely. I mean, Bravo beat Pony today. I don't care if Pony was, sleepwalking. That's an amazing win for a team that has not really had any super high-quality wins the whole year. And then you've got Machine High Five. I mean, Machine feels like the favorite there, but that was also a close game back at regionals. And then in the other pool, you've got Furious George and Sub-Zero, which is such a compelling game because it's two teams that have been extremely sort of intriguing as on-the-rise teams. These are teams that maybe we'll be talking about in a year or two as sort of consistent quarterfinalists and knocking on the potential door of semis if they continue to trend in the direction that they're going. Can Sub capitalize on all the young talent? Can Furious finally, get some big wins in big spots? We know they've been to the quarters fairly recently, and I think what's interesting about that, of course, we already mentioned it, Sockeye awaits those teams in the quarters. Also, I think an interesting game awaiting Sockeye.
So here we are at this period that happens every year. Thursday night, all you got is tons of questions. You just have questions on questions. How good is this team? Is this team for real? Can so-and-so bounce back? Can so-and-so continue to play this well? How does X team match up against Y team? All we have is questions. Can we please just get to Friday because I need some answers? And I'm looking forward to this bracket to provide them.
Absolutely. What's the game that you're most excited for in the pre-quarters? Let's start with that.
In any division?
Any division.
Got to be Dig Truck Stop.
That's fair.
Got to be Dig Truck Stop.
So I can tell you again, our streaming schedule tomorrow, obviously we don't know the matchups for quarters yet, but it'll be Amp versus Slow White in the mixed division in the pre-quarters. And then at 11:45 Pacific, we will have Revolver versus the winner of Dig versus Truck Stop. And then at 2 p.m. Pacific, we will have the Riot game, the Riot quarterfinal in the women's division against the winner of Scandal and Heist. I want to say they're playing Heist. Is that right?
Let me just pull it out real quick. I believe that's right. I think that's right.
So we'll see what happens there. So, I mean, Scandal with maybe a chance again. They didn't get the job done today against Molly Brown.
They lost 15-13. It was
close.
Right there.
They will certainly be underdogs, probably by a little bit of a wider margin against Riot, but I think a 15-13 result inspires confidence that Scandal, if they play their A game, has a shot.
Yeah, but it's another case of so close yet so far. And Scandal's got to feel that way. They got to feel like they let that one get away from them because it's very different to have won that game. The other game that I'm really intrigued by is Shame and Mischief. I mean, those are two high-flying teams, and that should be a lot of fun to watch. Mischief, a team that we've seen struggle when teams can dominate their women, and Shame is not necessarily that team. So I think we're going to see a lot of big hucks to their athletic cutters of both genders.
Well, all right. I mean, I think let's leave it at that. It's been an exciting day here in pool play. We have a lot of questions to be answered tomorrow. We have some great matchups. I don't know what the other streams will be yet. USA Ultimate, I don't believe, has announced those. But you can watch any of the games on ultiworld.com/live. It's super easy. You can toggle between them. So if one game's a blowout, just click right there, other game right in your stream.
Absolutely. You got to check out our live streaming coverage presented by Greenbacker.
Yes.
I think we've got a really dynamite lineup coming up tomorrow because everybody's been waiting for this. We're to the point of the season where seasons are about to start ending. I mean, we had a couple end today, but it's nothing like tomorrow.
Yeah, and the teams that lost, went 0-3 and didn't make it out of the pool play. But we didn't have a sockeye get knocked out this year. We didn't have a team of a very high caliber not make it to the bracket. There were some moments where we thought maybe that might happen. There was a chance that if Pony had lost a Truck that they could have lost and completely missed the bracket, but they answered the bell against Truck and dominated. So as the sun sets completely and we are in the twilight here in San Diego, we'll say goodnight. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here, ultiworld.com/live, your home for coverage of the 2018 USA Ultimate National Championships.